I'm pleased to welcome a distinguished guest with me here to the stage to introduce our closing panel. You can see who's part of this coming up. And so Commissioner Mai Chang-Zhang was elected to the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners to represent District 6 in a historic race, which puts her as the first Asian, first among American, and youngest to serve. Currently, Commissioner Zhang is chair of the Ramsey County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Commissioner Zhang was born and raised in St. Paul, where her family and extended families have called it home for the last 35 years. Commissioner Zhang has a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and graduated from the College of St. Benedict. Put your hands together for Commissioner Zhang.
All right, how are you all doing today? Feeling good after the conversations? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here to introduce our amazing workforce solutions director, Ling Becker. Before I go there, I just want to say a few quick brief remarks about how I'm very thankful for today's conversation and that I'm proud that I stayed and also joined in on those conversations, which were very fruitful and inspiring and hopeful for the work ahead. So first, I just want to say thank you to the American Association for the Advancement of Science and 3M for hosting this event. We are so honored to have this event in Ramsey County and to build upon the amazing keynote and workshops from earlier this afternoon. Ramsey County is one of the most diverse counties in the state of Minnesota, and it also has one of the largest disparities in income and homeownership, as well as educational outcomes. In my district, just right next door here, so if you go just across Minnehaha over here, that's in St. Paul. The median household income is just about $50,000. And our residents, more than half of them are under the age of 35. So it means that we have such a young and emerging workforce. And our young people are also where we need to invest. And we talked about this in our workshop where I was in with the girls and women in STEM, is that we need to continue to increase access to opportunities for all through deep partnership and resources. And so we are very grateful for the investment of 3M and 3M Gives to our local community. And we are so very grateful to have such strong partners working with one another at the county level. And what I heard today that stood out the most was just about the rare opportunity and occurrences where we get funders, philanthropists, local government, and businesses and nonprofits all in the same room talking about this. So thank you very much for that opportunity. So this next panel is an amazing testament to what happens when tremendous leaders work together. Let's see. I'm going to introduce Ling Becker to moderate this amazing panel. She is our Workforce Solutions Director, where Ling has overseen about a staff of about 80 folks and $20 million annually for our workforce services and programs to residents and businesses of Ramsey County in deep partnership with dozens of community-based organizations. Since the pandemic, Ling has worked so hard, overseeing millions of additional federally funded programs to build a more equitable recovery. And Ling is known as a community leader who delivers results by forging those relationships and building collaborations. She's thrilled to be a part of this conversation. And I'm just so proud that we have her at Ramsey County because she does all of that. And she also works really fast. So welcome, Ling.
All right, well, maybe while I get started, if the panelists want to just head on up here, we're going to end your day with some great examples of what we do in our community. I know we've talked a little bit the value of sort of connecting and the partnerships and moving this forward and the need. What these folks represent, these amazing leaders in our community, is that it truly happens at the grassroots level. Not that there's not more work to do, but in our own community, I feel so fortunate that we have so much happening of the folks that are here before us. So first of all, I have to say, I moderated a lot of panels, but not a panel of all doctors. And so bear with me here of just their strength of assets here. I think Commissioner Zhang and a few folks stated, Ramsey County, where we are the most diverse county in the state. I'm happy to say, as we talk about St. Paul College is the most diverse community college in the state, and our school district is the most diverse school district in the state. And so you can see there's a common theme of opportunity here. You heard from our commissioner about the age of the students or the residents that live in our community. More than half of all Ramsey County residents are under the age of 35. And I always like to think about the creative, untapped genius of those problem solvers. And so rather than seeing our diversity and age as deficits, we truly have a magnificent opportunity, not only to increase, like the moral responsibility we have, but I like to think that's even more than that. We have our economic competitiveness. We have our ability to change outcomes and upward mobility for our families. And each of these folks are been key in helping us do that. So first of all, I want to introduce Dr. Jolly, Eric Jolly. He's the president and CEO of the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, an organization working very hard to create an equitable and just, vibrant Minnesota. He partners across the state, and the foundation is the largest Minnesota community foundation. And in their work with Ramsey County has pushed us, supported us, helped us bring racial equity to the forefront of everything we do. So thank you, Dr. Jolly, for being here. And then and if you want to read his STEM bio, it is very long. You have it in your, he'll be able to talk more about it, but he definitely has deep roots in STEM in everything he's done in his career. But I did want to highlight, he's a life member of the Society of Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science and a life fellow of AAAS. So thank you for being here again, Dr. Jolly. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Joe Gothard. He's been a superintendent here in our school district since 2017. Again, St. Paul Public Schools is the most diverse school district in the state of Minnesota, is also the second largest. I like to also brag about this statistic a lot, Dr. Gothard, about the school district, is that the students here speak more than 100 languages within our school district. So that, again, rather than seeing that as a challenge, we lean into that as what an opportunity, right? All that richness. And then, but on the flip side, a great deal of need, right? 70% of whom are, have been in previous, we've changed a little bit in the way in our state that we're doing free and reduced lunch these days, where there's lunch for all, but certainly at the time, 70% would be eligible when that program was in place. So he's had a long career doing multiple school leadership roles and superintendent roles throughout the state of Minnesota and also in other states. And so you can see that in his bio as well. But thank you, Dr. Gothard, for being with us as well. And then lastly, I'd like to welcome Dr. Deidre, or we call her Dee Dee Peasley, innovative leader working with us in our higher ed community with community colleges and our supporting and has had a history with public and private universities and nonprofits. She's been here since 2019. And so my experience with working with Dr. Peasley is just a great person to just talk about ideas and think about how to do systems change. So I'm really excited about the conversations we're going to have today. So, so let's start off, Dr. Jolly, with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to get involved in STEM throughout your career?
Does this work? Yes.
Okay.
The same thing that inspired most of us, another person. And in my joyful life, several other people. It was over 60 years ago that my kindergarten teacher put an empty jar full of water. It was a peanut butter jar. Those of you who are young don't remember, they came in glass. Put one outside the classroom step and one inside the classroom door. And when I came back that next wintry day, one had cracked open and exploded, the other one hadn't. She said, "Tell me what you think, because what you think is a theory. And a theory is the tool of a scientist. And so I became a scientist in kindergarten. I had another teacher, so I worked for years at an organization that developed education and curriculum and science programs. And probably half of you, any of you who are over age 30, there's a chance that 85% of you took something called SPSS physics, and I worked with that group. But you don't know the name of your curriculum. You probably can't remember your science book in high school, but you can remember your science teacher's name. And my science teacher led me to believe I could do things. And I became gold medal finalist at the International Science and Engineering Fair. And that meant I got coddled by a lot of other scientists who helped me develop. And as I moved in, I realized something all too important, that education is perhaps the most liberating force in human development. Education, once attained, cannot be taken away. Knowledge, once gained, can't be turned away. And I became powerful through science and education, and it became my passion to hold that door open for everyone else who never had a chance. I'm a first generation high school attendee in my family, not just graduate. And somebody opened a door for me. And that's why I stay in STEM and STEM education, and a belief that this is how you give power to communities.
Thank you. Dr. Peasley, can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration around STEM?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And it's funny, I'm the imposter here because you're going to hear Dr. Gothard here in a second talk about his life as a biology teacher, I would imagine. And you hear Dr. Jolly talk about his science. I'm going to be really honest with you. The one C that I got in college was in biology. I am not a scientist. I look over at Dr. Onowar, who's the dean of STEM at St. Paul College, and I had a call on Dr. Onowar over Christmas to come up with a math problem to try and vex my children. I'm not a math person. I'm not a science person, but you know what I am? I'm an advocate, like Dr. Seth talked about. It's not about just being able to do the science. It's about supporting the people who do the thing. So my path is supporting the people who do the thing. I was standing in my living room in December. It must have been 9 years ago. And my 14-year-old daughter came to me and said, "Mom, what would you think if I left home and moved away for a month next summer?" And I said, "Tell me more." And what she told me was, "I found this awesome program called the Conservation Corps, where I can go and live in the woods for a month and do environmental projects. Would you let me go?" Like, tell me more. That began a journey for my daughter. She actually just moved out to Denver this last June. She is now an environmental engineer. And it's because I supported her. It's because I allowed her to explore things in her way. And I think that that's my role as a mom, and that's my role as an educator. So I started learning from my children, learning about STEM and figuring out ways that I could support these opportunities for students beyond my own children. And that's what we try and do through community college education.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Dr. Gothard, Mr. Biology teacher.
Well, Dr. Peasley gave me up already, but first I want to say Dr. Jolly, Lang, Dr. Peasley, these are three of my closest partners and people who I rely on an awful lot, especially these last few years that have been really difficult on education on all of us. I'll say just a couple of things about who or what inspires me around this topic. Mr. Hugic was my biology teacher in high school, Fowler High School in Madison, Wisconsin. And I had biology in H6, that was the room. Well, he was, it wasn't just the biology part of it that was great. He was just a kind and patient man who was dealing with a freshman like me, as I think back to those days. But most importantly, he gave me confidence. He gave me chances to demonstrate that I could learn from mistakes and that I could do it. As it turns out, years later, the first keys to a classroom that I received were to H6. I became a teacher in that same classroom. So for me, that cycle is very personal, very important, but it's not one that's always so glamorous, at least in my mind. You see, I was teaching general biology, and I didn't realize this until right towards the end of my teaching career, before I turned to the dark side and went into administration, when I got to teach honors biology. Teaching honors biology, I was in a different classroom, a different lab. I used different equipment. Instead of modeling dihybrid crosses in genetics on paper with pipe cleaners and things like that. We actually grew plants, made predictions, made observations, and conducted an entire science lab in experience. Students in general biology never got that experience, ever. And if I think of the picture of those two classes, one looks just like my classrooms in St. Paul Public Schools today, Black and brown diverse, high likelihood of children with disabilities. And in my honors class, it was quite the opposite, because you had to have a prerequisite of a certain score in reading and so on and so forth. But it's something that to this day really drives me as an educator in thinking about what does equity mean, because I will share with you that I guarantee you that the students in general biology would have thrived in that very same class. In fact, mid-course correction, I started to change a little bit because I'd never been exposed to having those kinds of expectations on myself and from our department. So it's something that, again, it sticks with me today, not with regret, but with a commitment and a passion to make sure that every student has the chance to learn at the very highest level, and that we as adults, educators, and community support them to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So our next question, Dr. Jolly, to you. So our goal in conversations today is to try to advance more equity, diversity, inclusion in STEM and skilled trades. What change would you like to see in how we collaborate across sectors today?
The word that comes to mind is coherence. The logical and consistent alignment among independent sectors towards a shared goal. The conversations we're having today is about identifying those shared goals. We can't do it all, but if we plan and work together and have a shared vision, we can see that it all gets done. Some of us are busy getting students engaged, having an interest in, an orientation towards a belief that they belong in the sciences. That sense of engagement is critical. If you don't have that, you're going to sit by the window and ignore the teacher droning in the room. If you do have that, you're going to live on every word they breathe. Engagement, belonging and believing that you belong, and having interests. Capacity, some of us do that, all right? It's remarkable. If you think about it, school system, a kid spends 6 hours a day in school, maybe less than half a year, 180 days a year. By the time a child is 18 years old, they will have spent about a third of their life sleeping, 3% eating and occasionally bathing, and less than 8% in schools. Schools do an enormous and great job with that 8% of a child's life. But that means that more than 40% is out of school. How do we help get them engaged through our science museums, through programs for youth in their home, everywhere else? We need engagement. We need capacity. Schools give capacity. That doesn't happen in iterative and recursive learning environments like museums. It happens in a school with a curriculum. We need to attend to every student getting that, because quite honestly, if you fail Algebra 1, you're not going to do well in AP Calculus. A remedial program means the school failed the student, not that the student failed the school. So we need to work on getting great capacity programs with well-trained teachers, good solid curriculum, and hands-on experiences for every single student. And then continuity. We need programs that help kids move through the system. Without the presence of a knowledgeable and caring adult, you might not know how to make that application for a FAFSA. You may have a family who's afraid of a student loan. And you may not have been guided to take the kind of courses you need to be able to earn a degree in 4 years, for which you'll be given college support if you're poor, even though the average time to graduation is 4.5 years. Engagement, capacity, and continuity are things that we all do a different part of. We don't all do it all, but if we have coherence, then we have a partnership that will work.
Dr. Peasley, what's your one change you would like to see?
One, really?
Only one.
All right.
Or maybe three, I guess.
I would
Summed up
actually,
in one.
I would actually feed off of what Dr. Jolly said, which is that I think we have significant work to do to help our parents and our families understand the careers that are even possible for their children. What we see at St. Paul College is that we see students coming in and the expectation and the hope is that they're going to graduate from a program and make a sufficient wage to actually support not only themselves, but their entire family. The problem is that we often see those students coming in and they've already been told what career they should be majoring in, right? Like we have a student that says, I have to become an accountant because that's what my dad says I need to become, because that is the greatest opportunity then for me to be able to graduate and support the family. They don't even know about, CNC machining, welding, pre-engineering, because that's not what their family is aware of. And so we need to do a better job of actually reaching out, supporting the family system, provide those opportunities for those students to be able to experience what those careers actually look like. And I think that would be a big help. The other thing that I would just say, and I know I only get one, but the second one I would say is that I think we do really need to rethink our educational systems. And I mean, not necessarily just at the college level or the K-12. Is it really about skill development, or where do we actually help our students understand about design thinking and problem solving? Because when I talk to employers, that is still the number one skill that they're looking for. And it's not explicitly taught. And we need to make sure that well, maybe it is. I mean, I think it is in some ways, but I think we need to figure out new ways to help all of our students to really have that design thinking so they can start breaking down the problems.
Dr. Gothard?
I like the idea of it being a multi-generational approach. I mean, a lot of life is based on reference structure, based on what my family did, what my neighbor did, and that sometimes limits young people in how they see themselves if they're not exposed to some of the other opportunities that other young people are. So I think one idea is that opening doors isn't enough. For years, we've been in education so satisfied when we look at data on a piece of paper that says this class is now diverse, but the support system isn't there. And I think it's a travesty when we allow for a young person, especially from an underrepresented group, go into a class without support. The impact of that, if it doesn't go well, could be drastic and really life-changing in a bad way. So the commitment has to be far more than opening doors. We've got to look for ways to support. We've got to look for ways that we traditionally approached how we teach, what we teach, making sure that it's relevant, making sure that we create a safe community in all of our learning, and the workforce for that matter as well. In terms of how we, the same is true for, breaking into the workforce and diversifying it as well. So I think, again, we can feel really good about our efforts, but the ongoing and continual support to me is what's lacking and what was most needed.
Yeah, thank you. I think in reflecting on your answers, I was also thinking, the work that we do together, our 4 organizations, really I think in order to collaborate, the one thing I think we need is actually knowing who are the partners possible are. And I think the fact that you're all in the room, if you actually work within the St. Paul Ramsey County community, we want to know you. We want to be able to connect with you, right? And I think wherever you represent, you should figure out who those people are. The fact that, Dr. Gothard started, we work closely. We actually regularly are in conversation. We're emailing back and forth. Knowing those really critical partners allows you to collaborate, and you're not trying to set a table every time there's an opportunity or a challenge. So I think that's just seems to me that the first thing you need to do in order to collaborate is to have the partners, at ready and the Rolodex ready. So, all right. So next, let's go back to Dr. Gothard here, and we'll change things up a little bit. So what are the essential ingredients for partnership in a community, kind of building on that last question? And, how can the broader national initiative here, support our local endeavors based on the conversations you've heard so far?
I think just the challenge is that in K-12 education, we are slow to change. I mean, again, very quickly, I go back to when I was the superintendent of Burnsville and Savage, 2013. One of the first things we did is I asked a support staff to look at the last decade by decade graduation requirements from 1950 on. And when I got that report back, what did I notice in terms of decade by decade, what the graduation requirements were? They hadn't really changed. Some of the language has, we started using fancy technological terms, but essentially the standards and what was expected of a graduate in 1950 hadn't changed all that much by 2013. It really hadn't. Maybe in electives and things like that, but that's a whole nother discussion. The core competencies of what we expect from a high school student really hadn't changed. And I think we're seeing that today clearly with the workforce that has changed far, more than that system. So I think partnership is about innovation and courage. It's about doing things differently. I'm really proud that I sit here with Dr. Peasley and I look at Michael and others with 3M. We have an advanced career pathway center on the campus of St. Paul College that's sponsored, and supported by 3M. And the reason that was important to me is that we do career pathway work in all of our schools, but we can't do it all at every school. So that leads to inequities. Why does a student at school A not have the same opportunity as a student at school B? Well, now we have that. And we bus students to our career pathway center so that they can be exposed to opportunities to further advance their own identity around what their career means and how it's tied to their learning. So I think it's having the courage to make decisions like that. I can tell you that not all the teachers at our schools are happy about that because it changes what their departments FTEs look like in terms of if they're no longer teaching, what does that mean? But I am a student-centered leader. And I'm trying to help our community understand that we are here for students. We're here for student outcomes. And I want our community to help us do that as well.
Thank you. All right, I'm change it up on you guys. Dr. Jolly, flip it over here for you. So as kind of the philanthropy arm of this, like how you're always pushing toward partnerships, I would think. So you answer this question about like, what are those essential ingredients from your perspective as, with the philanthropy hat and, and how that kind of leans into the broader national initiative from that angle.
So if you want to engage a foundation or a philanthropy, don't expect that they've got a scientist at the helm. And that means you need to define what their role is, how their role is supported by the partnerships, and what the limitations for that role will be. You have to demonstrate that the change you want supported will be sustained beyond the foundation. Think about the wealthiest foundation in America, the Gates Foundation. Now let's imagine for a minute that they wanted to reform K-12 education. They wanted to do it in a big way. So they sell all their buildings and all their assets, every bit of stock they own, every bit of cash, fire everyone, just put all that money into K-12 education, and they could support K-12 education across this nation for 5.25 days. As big as they are, in the grand scheme of the public work, they're small. Foundations are seed money. They are venture capital for ideas. And bring them the idea, bring them the outline of what their role is and the power of the partnerships that will assure, I'll come back to that word, coherence, a sustained, logical, and consistent alignment among resources that are already there towards a shared goal, which is new. That's a part of how I would suggest engaging foundations and philanthropies.
Thank you. Dr. Peasley, what are your essential ingredients for partnership?
I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, but I mean, it's off of what you said, Dr. Jolly. I think, in our country right now, education has become highly politicized. And I think that we as people who care about this work, who care about equity in STEM, we need to come together and actually show the value of education. We need to be very clear about this, that providing education to our students, the people, having an educated workforce is not political. And I think that the more that we can cut through that and say, this is the work that we have to do, that will help our partnership.
Thank you. Dr. Gothard, you lead a fairly large system as the second largest school district in the state here. How do you inspire systems thinking within the St. Paul, systems change thinking within the St. Paul School District? And can you share any examples of things that, might be in the spirit of some of the initiatives that we're moving on in these discussions today?
Yeah, I think as part of this discussion, just a few different areas that we're addressing it in a pre-K through 12 system. We just began a nature-based pre-K is a new program that we're offering right now. And again, it isn't because somebody had this great idea. It's because it's a demand and expectation from our workforce and from our families that these are opportunities that they want for their children. We began an STEM middle school 4 years ago now, not far from here at all. We've had aerospace for a number of years, K through 12. Students who are K through 12 get to spend time in flight simulators and be exposed to careers in the aerospace area. So, I mean, you know, there are opportunities throughout our entire district. It's a matter of who are the opportunities for. And I'll always say that the misconception about St. Paul Public Schools is that people don't ask enough questions or come and experience it themselves in terms of coming and finding out what our program of studies are. If you're a kindergarten student coming into our district, or the family of a kindergarten student coming into our district, there's 24 different options for you in terms of how you want to direct and start your learning experience. So not only is it diverse in the students we serve, it's diverse in the opportunities that are there as well. I think one other thing that I'll mention just in terms of innovation, the ability to work with the constraints that we have. You know, Dr. Jolly, I was writing notes as you were speaking because it speaks to me in terms of we hit $1 billion for our budget this year. $1 billion budget. I never in a million years thought I would lead a district that would have $1 billion budget. And yet there are still things that I will not be able to do. All right. And I'm not even close. And we could have a whole nother discussion about that. But the point is that we have to make sure that we're investing in a really smart way, a relevant way, in a way that is leading to outcomes that are good for kids. And that's where I need the continued help from our community as well, in the partnership that we do.
Can I ask you a follow-up to that? Like, how do you feel like as you need to do systems change, and is shifting funding like a really big challenge in that systems change, even with more resources?
It is, and I'll give an example. So we are the class of 2025 in St. Paul Public Schools. I'm really proud of this. A graduation requirement is 1 semester of critical ethnic studies. I said it in a public meeting, critical ethnic studies in some states, I wouldn't be able to say this. I wouldn't have my job. Sad as that. So it's a graduation requirement. But to do that, we had to change AP human geography from a semester or from a year long to a semester long. You see, it doesn't have to be a year long. Its requirement is a semester long, but the St. Paul way was it was always a year long. Who did that serve? Who did that serve? That did not serve students. That was the way it always was. So it became this vestigial thing that you don't dare change. Well, we changed it. And yes, there was some blowback and things like that. But again, we focused on students and made sure that we centered our decisions in equity. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done.
Thank you. Dr. Peasley, how about you for inspiring systems change within your organization?
Yeah, that's the hardest work that we do,
I agree.
honestly. It's never a short-term solution. And I think we always have to look at the root causes for what has created the situation that we're in. And I'll give one example that in 2019, after the murder of George Floyd, we took a hard look at ourselves as an institution. And as a result of that, we made a commitment to become an anti-racist and trauma-informed institution. And that permeates everything that we are doing at St. Paul College. So we have trained all of our faculty and staff on mental health first aid. So when a student is experiencing a mental health crisis within the classroom, our faculty and staff, they're not there as therapists, but they know a little bit more about what might actually be happening, and they're able to make a referral out. We are engaging extensively in equity by design, relooking at how we teach our classes. We can't continue teaching our classes in the same way and expect a different result. So those are just a couple of examples of what we've done at St. Paul College, and we have a long way to go, but as I said, systems change takes time, and we have to be patient, but not too patient. We have to continue pushing forward.
Dr. Jolly, how about you? I feel like you could probably write us a book on systems change with all your years of wisdom here.
It would only be because of age.
No, you've seen a lot of things that you've needed fixing.
I'm having trouble focusing on what one thing might be for systems change. I think Dr. Gothard talked about it. Dr. Peasley showed the courage of it. It's about being willing to not accept the system you've been given and changing the questions you ask, changing the people who ask the questions, and changing what you measure. And so, but the courage to do that and to stand with it is, I think, the toughest one to match. So what's some examples? I will try and do this in 60 seconds or less. All right. Don't say the answers out loud, but just if you would, I'm going to ask a series of questions. First, if you would you choose a number, an integer to make your life easier and mine as well, between 1 and 9. If you have an integer between 1 and 9, would you multiply that number by 9? If you've done it properly, or 2 and 9, let's say, you should have a 2-digit answer. If you don't have a 2-digit answer, you did the math wrong. If you do have a 2-digit answer, take those 2 digits, add them together. Now, if you've added those together, would you subtract 5 from your answer? Now, I want you to think of what letter in the alphabet you have. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4, E is 5. Would you think of a country whose name begins with the letter you've selected? Now, would you please think of a zoo animal whose name begins with the last letter of the country you selected? Would you think of a color that begins with the last letter of your zoo animal's name? Is there anyone in this room at all who fell prey to an orange kangaroo from Denmark? The questions that you ask structure the answers you're going to get. And the answers that you get reflect the culture and education you were raised in. When I do this exercise in Miami, I get anteaters from Dominica. When I did this in the American schools in Germany, I got yellow donkeys from Deutschland. But if I do it in middle America with people who went through a traditional high school and college, I get orange kangaroos from Denmark and occasional koala from those who are divergent thinkers. Change the questions you ask, change the culture of the person who's asking the question, and invest in measuring the solutions that they bring you. That's how I do systems change.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's a great way to, almost get to the end here. I think
the letter D, by the way, don't tell anyone. This is 3F. They don't make those errors.
I mean, I think that the couple themes that I've heard today, I don't know what you guys are taking away. I mean, hopefully everyone has a chance to write a couple takeaways. Is I love the idea that to do this work, you just have to stop thinking about your silos and who's getting credit. I think the pandemic taught Ramsey County, St. Paul College, this group, we learned that over and over again. What can you bring to the table? How are we going to get to yes? Who can take this baton? Who can do that? And that's kind of the crisis we have based on what we saw on the PowerPoint here just before this panel. And then the all hands on deck. And I love maybe ending with this idea of, making sure the right people are asking the questions. And I think the next step for our community, and I actually brought it up to AAAS, is, we need to get the young people, the folks that we're trying to get into these systems, also informing these strategies, because that's this big system change we've made in the county, is to really have more and more of the folks that are benefiting and we're trying to solve for problems within their lives to come and bring us the solutions, because they're the experts on the challenges that they're facing. And so I think that's another, those are the 3 things I'm walking away with, but I don't know, maybe take a moment, just this next 1 minute, to write down a few things, but we want to stay connected, hopefully with some of you, to advance this work. Cause I love that we have this opportunity for a national strategy, but we get to actually do it here. We're the ones that are here in this space today. So thank you, Dr. Jolly, Dr. Peasley, Dr. Gothard, for your time. Appreciate it. And thank you, Michael.